There is a photograph stored deep inside the archives of the Hungarian National Museum. A photograph taken around 1890. At first glance, it appears completely ordinary. A small village market, wooden stalls, women wrapped in dark wool shawls, a child blurred by movement at the edge of the frame. Exactly the kind of scene you would expect from the late 19th century. But hidden in the background is something strange. Partially concealed behind a grain stall stands a building, and painted across its wall is a phrase written in a script that researchers have never been able to confidently identify. The museum cataloged it as decorative and moved on. Yet this raises an unsettling question. What happens when history files away something unusual before anyone truly investigates it? Because this is not an isolated case. Again and again, old photographs seem to contain details that do not fit comfortably into the stories we tell about the past. To understand why, we need to understand what early photography actually captured. When Nicephore Niepce created the first successful photograph in 1826, the exposure lasted nearly 8 hours. He was not capturing a moment, he was capturing time itself. Light slowly accumulated on a surface, while the world remained still. Early photographers were not freezing reality, they were collecting it. And sometimes, hidden at the edges of their images, they captured things they never intended to photograph. Things in the background, things nobody was looking for, things that today seem difficult to explain. One example comes from the work of Francis Frith, an English photographer who spent years documenting Egypt and the Nile Valley. His photographs remain some of the most important visual records of the region, but among them are images showing unusual formations near the ancient site of Bubastis. Structures and patterns that do not appear to match the landscape historians believe existed there. When questions were raised decades later, the response was cautious. Perhaps the formations were natural. Perhaps they were optical distortions. Perhaps they were simply mistakes in interpretation. All reasonable explanations. Yet none fully answered the question, and so the mystery remained. There is a recurring pattern in the history of unexplained evidence. When something doesn't fit, institutions often choose the least disruptive explanation, not because of deception, but because simplicity is usually the safest conclusion. Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. But simplicity should be the beginning of an investigation, not the end. Many of the most puzzling photographs share a common trait. The anomaly is rarely the subject of the image. Instead, it exists in the background, in the margins, in the places nobody thought were important. And many of these photographs were taken during periods of enormous change. Cities being rebuilt, ancient neighborhoods demolished, trade routes disappearing, entire landscapes transformed. Photographers documenting these changes were unknowingly capturing worlds in their final moments. Consider Charles Marville, the official photographer of Paris during its massive reconstruction in the 19th century. His job was simple: photograph the old city before it disappeared. And he did exactly that. Thousands of images preserving streets and buildings that no longer exist. But hidden among those photographs are architectural details that continue to puzzle researchers. Stonework unlike known regional styles, unusual construction methods, proportions that seem to follow an unfamiliar design language. Marville was known for accuracy. He photographed what was in front of him, which leaves us with a simple question. What exactly was he seeing? There is a concept known as the shadow landscape, the idea that every place contains traces of all the places that came before it. Old roads beneath new roads, ancient walls beneath modern walls, layers of forgotten history embedded within the world around us. Early photographers walked through these landscapes every day, and sometimes they recorded details that vanished before anyone thought to study them. But some photographs remain difficult to explain even within this framework. In 1908, Sergei Prokudin-Gorsky began an ambitious mission to photograph the Russian Empire. He traveled across vast regions of Siberia, Central Asia, and the Caucasus, documenting places many people had never seen. His archive survives today, and hidden within it are images showing structures that later surveys failed to locate. Not ruins, not foundations, entire buildings, visible, standing, apparently occupied, yet absent from later records. Perhaps the locations were mislabeled. Perhaps the surveys were incomplete. Perhaps the structures were temporary. All possible explanations, but none have been conclusively proven. And remarkably, these questions have never been the focus of a major investigation. The photographs exist, the anomalies remain visible, but almost nobody is looking for them. This may be the most important detail of all. Historians study history. Architects study architecture. Archaeologists study archaeology. Each discipline focuses on its own questions, and as a result, details that fall between those disciplines often remain unnoticed. No one is looking at the margins, and the margins may be where the secrets are hiding. In 1971, a French archivist named Henriette Alten suggested that historical photographs represented an accidental survey of the world, a vast record of landscapes, structures, and communities captured without anyone realizing their future significance. She believed careful examination of background details might reveal entire chapters of forgotten history. Her idea was neither disproven nor embraced. It was simply ignored, and eventually the discussion faded away. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what these photographs contain, but how much has already been lost. Between 1860 and 1950, countless villages, roads, traditions, and architectural styles disappeared. Entire ways of life vanished beneath industrialization, conflict, and modernization. The photographers of that era unknowingly created the last visual record of many of these worlds. They aimed their cameras at famous landmarks, but the lens captured everything, including things no one fought to preserve. Maybe the strange details in these photographs are not strange at all. Maybe they belong to a reality that once existed, a reality that has since been erased. The anomaly may not be in the image. The anomaly may be in our lack of knowledge. Perhaps these photographs are not mysteries, but glimpses of a forgotten world waiting to be rediscovered. Perhaps they are clues. Clues pointing toward a past more complex than we currently understand. Because history is not defined only by what survives. It is also shaped by what disappears. Every photograph is a decision about memory. What deserves attention? What deserves preservation? And what gets left behind? The photographs remain, carefully catalogued, carefully stored, waiting in silence. Their information is not missing. It is simply unread. And somewhere, hidden in the background of an image nobody has examined for decades, there may be a detail capable of changing the way we see the past. A shape that does not belong. A structure that should not exist. A clue waiting for someone willing to notice it. The question is not whether these photographs exist. The question is whether we are willing to truly look at them.